Good morning and welcome to the Thursday, June 8th, 2017 regularly scheduled meeting of your county commissioners for Santa Rosa County. Glad you're all here. It's a little after 9 a.m. and we'll call the meeting to order. We start every morning with prayer and the pledge, and today we have Pastor Josh Wilson of the Emmanuel Baptist Church that's here to lead us in the prayer this morning. If you would, please rise. Good morning.
Good morning. Let's pray together. Father, we thank you so much for the beautiful day you've given us and just the chance to live another day. Father, we know that there's much business to take place as we live in a county that you have richly blessed economically and from the schools and protection. And Lord, with population surging, we know that there's many demands and more businesses moving in the area. And we just stop to just thank you for that, Lord. Thank you that we're living in a time where you have great plans for Pace and Milton and this county. Navarre and all the other places that are this far beyond anything we imagine. So I pray for our council members and leaders today. Just grant them wisdom and guidance and direction as they make decisions together that will be best for the people of this county. I pray for us as citizens that we would look for the areas of influence and the areas of opportunity you've given us to make a difference in people's lives where we are. So God, I pray we would conduct business today in a way that would honor you. And Lord, may we listen more than we speak and use judgment and discernment that you give us. We praise your name. In Jesus' name, amen.
If you'd all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our country's flag. But before we start, I'd like to identify something that's questionable. I say one nation under God. A lot of folks say one nation under God. Whatever way you say it is fine, because we're all Americans. We love this country, and people fought and died for our right of freedom of speech. So please join me as we pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Wilson, and thank you, Vice Chairman Cole. We have approval of the minutes, but we do not have a date for which of minutes we'll be approving. Is that the May 25th? This is mine. It might have a older.
May 25th.
It is the May 25th? Mine just says approval. There we go. Okay, I got it. It's under approval of agenda. Approval of the minutes of the May 25th, 2017 regular and special meetings. Had those in your backup. There's no questions or concern. I would move approval of those minutes without objection. Hearing no objection, those minutes are approved. Next, move on to the approval of the agenda. And I will start with my right with Commissioner Parker.
Just would like to add a informational item somewhere on the agenda, wherever you think is best, Mr. Chairman, to discuss some of the issues that were absorbed in my district after the rain event on Tuesday night.
I know that it definitely met the definition of a 100-year flood, and I know you and staff have been out there talking to affected residents, and definitely would appreciate having a update on that. We have a public hearing scheduled for 9:30, and we have presentations. What I'd like to do is get the presentation out of the way, and then we'll see if we can put that information only item in there ahead of Economic Development Committee. Vice Chairman Cole.
Mr. Chairman, I have two information items I'd like to add to today's agenda, early in the agenda. They're both concerning National Organization of Counties.
Okay. We can add those information items in immediately following Commissioner Parker's info item. And if we have to move to the public hearing at 9:30, we'll knock that out and then come right back. Commissioner Lynchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No additions to the agenda. Just want to let everybody know about an event happening down in Gulf Breeze this weekend. The Sertoma Annual Fishing Rodeo, Family Fishing Rodeo, is this Saturday and Sunday. They have a lot of seminars and events for kids. It's at Shoreline Park in Gulf Breeze. There's information online. They have a website, but it's the Sertoma Fishing Rodeo. Always a great family event. If you catch a bigger fish than me, weigh-in is at 5 o'clock. If it's smaller than mine, weigh-in ends at 5 o'clock. So just remember that.
Any members of staff have anything?
No changes.
No changes.
Okay, I can see that we have many residents here from Navarre, and they took the time to drive up from South County to attend today's meeting, and it's my understanding that they're here to address a board-related item from Monday's agenda pertaining to signage. So due to those continued comments from Navarre and in response to those who took their time to come here today, I'd like to add to the Economic Development Committee just discussion of Navarre Beach signage. And that would be the only item under Economic Development Committee. And with those changes mentioned today, I would move approval of the agenda without objection. Hearing no objection, the agenda is approved. We will now move to our proclamation. We have the first proclamation. Yes, it is Mr. Larry Wayne. Where is Larry? There we go. For Amateur Radio Week. And I'll read the proclamation, and then we'll allow you the opportunity to address the board. Whereas amateur radio operations are celebrating over a century of the miracle of human voice broadcast over the airwaves, and whereas amateur radio has continued to provide a bridge between peoples, societies, and countries by creating friendships and the sharing of ideas, and whereas amateur radio operators have also provided countless hours of uncompensated community services, both in emergencies and to other organizations throughout these decades. And whereas the county also recognizes the services amateur radio's people provide to our many emergency response organizations, including Santa Rosa County Emergency Management, Holly Navarre Fire Department, and the Santa Rosa County Sheriff's Office. And whereas these same individuals have further demonstrated their value to public assistance by providing free radio communications for local parades, walkathons, fairs, and other events. And whereas the County of Santa Rosa recognizes and appreciates the diligence of these hams, who also serve as weather spotters in the Skywarn program of the U.S. Government Weather Bureau. And whereas amateur radio once again proved its undisputed relevance in the modern world in 2005 by providing emergency communications when other systems failed in the devastation of Hurricanes Katrina and Rita in the USA and in tsunami catastrophe overseas. And whereas the ARRL is the leading organization for amateur radio in the USA, and the ARRL Amateur Radio Field Day exercise will take place on June 24th and 25th, 2017, and is a 24-hour emergency preparedness exercise and demonstration of the radio amateur skills and readiness to provide self-supporting communications without further infrastructure being required. Now, therefore, we, the Board of County Commissioners of Santa Rosa County, do hereby proclaim June 19th through the 25th, 2017, as Amateur Radio Week in Santa Rosa County to honor and in recognition of our amateur radio operators and the vital contributions they make to the safety and well-being of our citizens. Signed by me, the board chairman. Please take it away.
As the president of the Milton Amateur Radio Club, we'd like to thank you. And we'll do a good job for you guys.
Thank you for what you do. I remember T.J. Doherty when he set up down in Navarre, and we had the week down there, and I got the opportunity a few years back to see what y'all do. It is awesome. It is a great service that you provide, too. If you would, come on up, and we'll get your picture made. Thank you for being here today. We will now move on to...
Mr. Chairman, real quick, if we could.
Yeah, Vice Chairman Cole.
Anybody in the public is invited to come out to this event and see what goes on and maybe take an interest in this ham radio. It's nothing these folks keep to themselves. They're very nice about opening their tents and opening their facility to whoever. I haven't been able to attend last year or this year, but if you get a chance, go out and see how they work. It's a great event, and former Commissioner and Judge Robert Hilliard's it's very near and dear to his heart too. He loves doing that, and it's amazing when you're talking to somebody in Japan or China, and it's over free airwaves that they provide. So, guys, thanks for your service.
Thank you for that. Now we have a presentation, a very significant presentation, and something that I know has been very important to Jane Bell, our Office of Management and Budget Director, and her staff. They have worked very hard on this. This is a very prestigious award. I believe it's the first time that Santa Rosa County has ever won this award in our history. This is the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. And there have been many changes and modifications and improvements that Jane has been making in the way our budget is presented and the way we get information out to the public. And today's presentation is in recognition for them receiving this distinguished award. Tony, take it away.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, certainly want to recognize Jane and her staff and those that really worked hard for this. I know it represents what the board wants to achieve and what our staff wants to achieve. And we're not satisfied. We're continuing to look for ways for this document to serve as a strong communication document that people can understand the programs, the purpose, and have confidence in our budgeting process. And so we think we're headed in the right direction. This award represents that, but we're not satisfied. We're still going.
We really just needed to get a good budget and financial management committee chair, and then good things started happening. That's all we needed. Ms. Bell, I know you don't like to talk a lot at the meetings, make it about everybody else but yourself, but would you please say a few words?
Yes, I'll be happy to. I am really most grateful to Tony, to Henry Bruton, Sabrina White, to Brandy, and to Commissioner Williamson, who was our budget chair at the time, because without their help, this would not have been possible. This has been a goal of ours for quite some time. It is a great honor. It does reflect well on the county, and we certainly do intend and will do everything we can to keep the momentum going. And thank you so much for all your help and support.
Thank you very much. Any members of the board like to address this? Commissioner Lynch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just congratulations to Jane and the staff, everyone who's worked on this. It is a very prestigious award and well-deserved.
All right. Thank you very much. Job well done. I love it. Do we know how many folks, how many counties in the state of Florida out of the 67 won it this year?
I don't know that for this year, but I think last year there were 27 counties.
27.
67.
All right. Well done. Back to back. All right. The first information-only item is for Commissioner Parker. Take it away, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Had a couple pictures. There were obviously many more, but Just to bring back, definitely been a learning experience going through my first one as a commissioner, and I will say even had a former commissioner send me a text, on Tuesday night, said, hey, I bet you're learning to hate rain, as some of these former ones were. So it's been a huge learning experience for me from the operational side, but I can tell you it's a tremendous help having Brad Baker tied in with our 911 services. That is a way that we're obviously usually first learn about the roadways and the homes that are affected. I know Stephen had many crews. I saw, Glenn out and many people from Public Works yesterday talking with folks. And one reason for bringing this up was just please, I know staff is doing great, but any members of the public or the audience, if you know people that were affected, please make sure that they reach out and let us know at least their address, because that is huge, that we're able to document it for future purposes, especially for grant-type funding and FEMA assistance, that we can show if we have residents that are suffering over and over. Walked inside of probably at least a half dozen homes yesterday with people that had varying degrees, but I would say on average it was 2 to 4 inches, inside the homes, just enough to sort of ruin the floor and suck up into the drywall. But this particular picture was over in Metron Estates, and I wish I would have provided some more to show you, because basically where this neighbor had the large section of their yard blow out, it went right down the road and landed all on the other neighbor's front porch. So it was there's definitely people in our community that are suffering and hurting, and the emotional side of this is I think hard to quantify without being there to see some of these, especially most of the homes that flooded, or I should at least say a significant portion, were some of our senior and elderly community. And I mean, it's just sort of the mental devastation that they're going through is tremendous. But I brought it up to kind of tell you guys what I saw, and I think it really helps put perspective back on what things are important. And for us, and talking with citizens, I mean, I think it's just a good reminder that our goals are, safe roads and doing what we can to keep our county safe and clean and protect citizens and their property, and a huge arm of that is our sheriff's office, protecting people. And a lot of these homes that flooded, I think all but one that I visited, were built in the 70s, and unfortunately they didn't have some of the stringent requirements that we require the newer developers. But I know other districts and people throughout our county have been devastated in the past, and just want to say this was a great refresher for me to look at, that we've got to continually support things like we're doing right now with this local option sales tax list of stormwater mitigation to go back and help some of these folks. So just wanted to let you guys know, I think in all we had roughly around 15 homes that took on water in livable area. I don't think we have any roads that are currently closed as of today. The water has started to subside, but again, it's just very good to look back and realize how blessed we are. If we're sitting here today instead of still mopping water out of our houses, then I would say that it's truly a blessing. And just encourage the citizens that don't just say that you'll pray for these folks, but if you're able to help them out, whether it's financially or labor or donation of building materials or furniture, just please reach out to these are our neighbors. So I appreciate the opportunity. Again, I think if anybody else has any questions, Mr. Furman has a lot of information that they've gathered. And I, again, just want to say how tremendous the staff was. I mean, I saw them out all day. I saw road crews out this morning about 7:30 picking up barricades from roads where the water has subsided. So thank you for the time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that update, Commissioner Parker. Is the emergency part of it, Stephen, behind us now, and now we're more to the evaluation phase and seeing how these projects, if any, will impact and update our H&GP process, where I know it was a 100-year flood event, but with structural flooding, not nuisance flooding, is that going to impact any of our planning moving forward or priorities?
What we're looking at doing is, once we kind of get a little bit of rest under our eyelids and tabulate where these homes were damaged, we're looking at adding some areas to our local mitigation strategy list, which enables those areas to be eligible for federal funding when we get a declared disaster. So yes, sir, we are using the data that we're collecting to help further our efforts in the future for grant funding to make major repairs in some of these areas.
Thank you very much for what you do. Thank you for the update. Commissioner Lynchard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to reiterate what something Commissioner Parker said and that Mr. Furman hit on, if you've experienced flooding either in your home or garage, let the county know, because when it does come time for submission of an HMGP grant or consideration of projects, FEMA will look, and if you have not filed a claim in the past, then that flood event doesn't count. So, or filed a notice that you, not necessarily a claim, but a notice that you have experienced flooding. So it is imperative that if you were affected by this event, that you let the county know, and we can make sure to get that address in the system so that in the future, if money becomes available through FEMA or some other grant funding source, your home will be eligible.
Definitely good advice, comments there for sure. And we're now moving on to the next information-only item. Commissioner Cole had a NACO, 2 items for NACO.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very good on the timing on these items. The first one I'd like to bring to the board's attention is NACO announced that they're now accepting policy resolutions for the 2017 annual conference. I intend to write and support 2 resolutions that will go to energy, environment, and land use. The first resolution is I'm going to endorse and support asking NACO to make it policy that we support President Trump in his withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement of 2015 and continue to look for a more fair way for the United States to be in that conversation. But I think we've all heard how we bear a big brunt of the cost of that. The second item, and again, the timing is good because it's a resolution I'd like to present to NACO on giving the Army Corps of Engineers a time clock. And when I mentioned this to our county engineer, he said they are on a time clock. They have 90 days after you submit a completed application. The problem with their time clock is they keep finding ways that you can not complete the application. So I want to reach out to engineering firms and other people that can give me good examples of this so we can get things moving in our country, basically. I mean, when all the other agencies have a time limit on providing the return of a permit and a large company plans construction of something, say, to fall in line with the permits, and they have to delay that construction or wait on the Army Corps, it costs money. And when some of those companies are utilities, it ends up costing us as citizens. And actually, any company that delays construction, delays anything, costs everybody. It costs in jobs, it costs in the product they may produce for the American public. So I feel, you know, the Army Corps should fall in line with all other agencies and have a responsibility to get these permits back in a timely manner. Then the other thing I'd like to let the board know of, that on Monday, June 12th at 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, that a conference call that is a result of President Trump's February 28th executive order on restoring the rule of law, federalism, and economic growth by reviewing the waters of the states rule. This directs the EPA and the Corps to revisit and rewrite the 2015 WOTUS rule agencies are invited to take part in this discussion. The agencies will discuss several options under consideration for rulemaking, including an effort to develop a new WOTUS definition based on Supreme Court Justice Anthony Scalia's opinion in Romeos versus United States. In Romeos, the Corps was challenged over its intent to regulate isolated wetlands under the Clean Water Act, Section 404 permit program. In a 4-1-4 split decision, Justice Scalia plurally opinion stated that federal jurisdiction should only include waters with a relatively permanent flow. This current WOTUS basically, and Roger, correct me if I'm wrong, makes all the swells along our road come into Army Corps jurisdiction, whether they connect waterways or not. And it gets a little overbearing. Basically, if there's a puddle out in a pasture and a duck can land in it and then fly to another puddle, that, in the Army Corps' eyes, creates connectivity. And it's gotten a little overboard. And again, it ends up costing the citizens of the United States, you and I, in tax dollars and delays. So I wanted to pass that information on to the rest of the board. If there's any board members that would like to sit in on that call, or public, there's a conference call number and a conference ID number. You're only allowed to take part in the conversation if you are a member of NACO and sit on that the EELU, which is an Energy, Environment, and Land Use Subcommittee. But I felt it's an important enough subject to let the rest of the board have a shot at it if they'd like to. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And some of you may be wondering why we're bringing this up today, and it's because we don't have the opportunity to talk to each other about it. So it's kind of the only way we can get that information out at some time.
Mr. Chairman, it also is the part of the ordinance that we're going to be discussing.
Correct. The one that relates to bodies of water would devastate the farming community, agricultural communities. It would bury them in new federal regulations that currently, they're very good stewards of the land. They depend on the land for their livelihood. But this would so dramatically expand regulations as it relates to bodies of water. It really is that technical. If you had a ditch out in front of your house, or if water collected consistently in a portion of your property, that would now be subject to these more stringent federal regulations. So I'm glad that you're leaning in on that, and I'm hoping that you'll help us kind of stay ahead of the curve a little bit. That takes care of the information-only items, and your timing is perfect. It is 9:30, and we will now move on to our public hearing. I will call the public hearing to order. Public hearing number 1 is related to a proposed ordinance related to Section 10-58, illicit discharges and illicit connections. You have the information in your backup, and we have opened the public hearing. Are there any members of the public that would like to address the board on this matter? If not, we are going to move to close the public hearing. Yes, if you would like to speak on the proposed ordinance, please come forward. Name and address for the record, please.
Bob Hutchison, 2596 Crescent Road, Navarre. Gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to speak in my capacity as the External Vice President for Holly by the Sea. I am in favor of any document that strengthens the collaborative enforcement efforts across all levels of government. However, by endorsing this proposal, there is an appearance that this body engages in selective enforcement. This proposal seeks, as I understand it, to hold individuals accountable for allowing toxic pollutants into our stormwater system, utilizing the Clean Water Act as its source document. The same source document, the Clean Water Act, is what gives the U.S. EPA its authority to regulate and enforce Title 40 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 122, also referenced in this proposal. Ironically, the Clean Water Act is a source document that provides the Army Corps of Engineers with its authority to regulate and enforce SAJ 103. SAJ 103 seeks to hold builders accountable for site development and construction on designated wetland lots within the exclusive domain of Holly by the Sea. It appears as if this body has abrogated its legal, ethical, and moral responsibilities to uphold SAJ 103, a law that is designed to maintain some semblance of wetlands within Holly by the Sea. To sum it up, my comments dovetail into Commissioner Parker's photos as they depict like homes in Holly by the Sea. I call this selective enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Name and address for the record, please.
Yvonne Harper, 7375 Olympia Street. I'm also here on behalf of Holly by the Sea as the board president. I would like it to be on the record that I do support this ordinance, but I also would like to point out the disparity in the board's position if it moves forward. On May 25th, Bob Cole stated when he voted against the proposed land development code change to require a copy of a wetland permit, citing SAJ 103, as Bob Hutchinson aptly pointed out, the founding document for that is the Clean Water Act, as much as for this ordinance. He stated he would be voting against it, that we had seen from the last presidential election, American citizens want less regulations, not more, and to, quote, and to enforce other agencies' policies is not our job, close quote. And he also cited selective enforcement. This is, in a sense, a selective enforcement of the Clean Water Act. Throughout this ordinance, the federal law and state law is cited, and it also provides the county with authority to inspect, and it also states that it shall be made part of the Code of Laws and Ordinance of the Santa Rosa County. So I am in favor of this, but I would just want it on record that the board seems to be inconsistent with which federal law they're going to enforce and which federal law they're not. Thank you.
And I'm going to go to our county attorney at this point, and could you brief the public on the record as to why this item was brought before the board for a public hearing and what the objective was of bringing this forward? I see Mr. Blaylock has, all right, okay, thanks, Roy.
Essentially, this is a requirement of our NPDES permit, which is a stormwater and wastewater permit for the county that requires that we prohibit and restrict illicit discharges of hazardous waste and construction activities, or connections to industrial or construction activities. So this is pretty much mandated by the federal government in regard to our permit for the county. And it is, I mean, this is the standard nationwide. It doesn't require Santa Rosa County to do anything other than is required by the feds everywhere.
Did any member of the board direct this ordinance to move forward, or did this happen as a response to the federal government and us meeting our requirements?
It's a response to the federal requirements, which have been the Code of Federal Regulations have been changed a little bit, and this reflects that change. It's consistent with what we already have on the books, or at least mostly consistent with what we have already on the books.
I see the strike through in the draft, but are there any material changes that would be of note that we would want to identify beyond, what we were currently doing now and what this new ordinance would introduce? I'm not familiar with any, but
not really. If you look under provision 10.58.02 of the ordinance, it sets forth those activities that are exempt from this regulation, which includes landscaping, irrigation, diverted stream flows, rising groundwaters, discharges from potable water source, foundation drains, air conditioning, constant irrigation water, springs, which is kind of nice since I don't know what we could do about springs anyway. But in any case, there's nothing in here that I think is overly burdensome and nothing that doesn't meet the requirements that the federal laws already place on us.
just given the timing of the public hearing, I didn't want it to be misconstrued that this board had directed these efforts or anything to that effect, but that this is just normal response to what we are required to do to meet federal regulations, guidelines. If there are no further comments from members of the public, or if no members of the board would like to address this matter, then I'm prepared to close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed on the proposed ordinance. I would now move approval of the proposed ordinance related to Section 10-58 illicit discharges and illicit connections. I would move approval of that ordinance without objection. Hearing no objection, that is approved. I would now open the public hearing on the vacation of a portion of 11th Street, Baghdad, Florida, as requested by Todd and Sharon Pike. You have the information in your backup. Would any members of the public like to address the board on this vacation request? If not, I am going to close the public hearing. Would anyone like to address the board on this matter? Okay. Now I'm closing the public hearing, and I would move approval of the vacation request of a portion of 11th Street, Baghdad, Florida, as requested by Todd and Sharon Pike. Would the district commissioner wish to make any comments on this item? Vice Chairman Cole.
Mr. Chairman, move it without objection.
We have a properly formatted motion without objection. Hearing no objection, that vacation request is approved. That concludes the public hearings. We will now move on to item number 1, the add-on for discussion of Navarre Beach signage, the Economic Development Committee. And I'd like to move to public comment. If any members of the public would like to address the board on the item of discussion of Navarre Beach signage, please feel free to come forward at this time. A little bit of something I forgot to mention earlier. If you have a cell phone, if you would, I know it's a little late now, but if you would, please put it on silent mode, and when you come up to address the board, just give your name and address for the record. Thanks for being here this morning, and go right ahead.
My name is William Goulet. I live at 8168 Torres Street, Navarre, Florida. I appreciate you opening the floor so I could speak today. Thank you for allowing me to speak today on the issue of the Navarre Beach Causeway entrance sign. I don't want to rehash the issues of your last meeting, and I hope that any anger or frustration that any of you have towards Commissioner Williamson and his actions are kept separate from this issue as it relates to the citizens of Navarre and this county. I also want to express support for the TDC Director, Julie Morgan, and her staff, and the hard work by them and Paradise Marketing and this commission in the new branding and marketing campaign. Tourism is a vital and important item to my business. With the tourism growth has in part allowed me to hire additional employees and expand my business, so thank you to all involved. The Navarre Beach sign issue, in my opinion, is separate from the branding and the marketing campaign. I have no doubt that we will draw visitors to our area with this new slogan and campaign. It would draw me to the area if I already haven't lived here. But the Navarre Beach sign isn't all about bringing people to Navarre. Nobody will see the sign until they are already here. To them, it is merely a marker to the entrance to the beach. I highly doubt the different look and slogan will turn them around or cause any confusion. We have proof of this with the most recent campaign of Florida's Playground, which the county branded and marketed the last 3 years, all while the sign remained Florida's best kept secret. But honestly, this isn't about a branding campaign or even about money. For the folks in Navarre that I speak with and myself, this is about history. History is something that this board has shown great deference to over the years, supporting many programs and projects to protect the history of Milton and Baghdad. Now, Navarre doesn't have a history like those areas. We don't have 100-plus-year-old buildings, can't lay claim to the oldest anything. We really have very little history other than 5 family names and rebuilding after several horrific hurricanes. This is why the sign is so important. This is one of the few icons of Navarre that harkens back to a simpler time, when Navarre was truly a secret with a few thousand residents and a beach that you couldn't find on a map, and you could visit on a Saturday and not see another person for miles in any direction. For a community that doesn't have much to hang on to regarding their past, this sign really is the core of where we came from. I know it isn't a universal opinion, and I may want the new and shiny. I won't deny him that. The sign at the boat launch on Highway 87, all the signs on the island, the marketing material and website are already changed with the new slogan and logo. For those of us that have been here 20-plus years, for those families that founded this area, for those that will spend the rest of their lives here, retire here, and probably die here, have a piece of history to point to is a good thing. Now, this isn't a big deal. It doesn't rise to the level of funding our sheriff's department or figuring out the flooding issues that impacted so many families over the last couple days, or protecting our children from predators that walk among us, or getting the drugs out of our community. No, this doesn't rise to that level. So why are you fighting it so hard to take away a sign that costs you nothing and means little to those who oppose it, but means a lot to those of us who want to keep it? Please return a small piece of history to the entrance of Navarre Beach. No one is harmed by this action, but many will feel a gain. This isn't a war or a challenge to the authority of this commission. This is a request by a longtime resident who understands the value of roots and wants to be able to pass this on to my children. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Will. Anybody have any questions for Will? Thank you. Hi, good morning.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good morning. Tony Alexander, 55 Kempton Street in Navarre. I wanted to take an opportunity to restate some of the comments that I shared by email with Commissioner Parker and Commissioner Lynchard yesterday and with Commissioner Cole this morning. I've been a resident of Navarre for about 14 years, and unlike Commissioner Parker stated on Monday that there were, two sides to this issue, those that are for the new sign and those that are against the new sign. There's a third segment of the population, and that's folks like me that don't have an emotional attachment to the sign. What I do have is about 8 years of exhaustive work to improve the Navarre community in Santa Rosa County. And there probably are few people that have their finger on the pulse of Navarre more than I do, Commissioner Williamson notwithstanding. If we do not find a compromise for the reasons that Mr. Goulet just stated, this issue will fester and it will become a distraction for all of the hard work that folks are doing to improve the Navarre community and Santa Rosa County. We know if we look at voter rolls over the last many years that the percentage of the population that's really engaged is fairly small. And unfortunately, with regard to this issue, those that have chosen to speak out are the vocal minority. And again, if we don't address the issue and find a compromise, the vocal minority are going to continue to spread false information, which will undermine the work to improve the community. I think that the solution, in my opinion, as one that has no attachment to the sign, is to place the legacy sign in the location that it was and figure out a way to incorporate the new sign. I think that's the best opportunity to put the genie back in the bottle, so to speak. I think that Commissioner Lynchard alluded to on Monday. And I also think that that will allow us, folks like myself and my organization and others, to continue to do hard work to improve the community without the distraction and the unfortunate distraction that comes with a Facebook page that has 16,000 folks. I know if I'm a business owner looking to expand into the Navarre community and I start to do some research, I'm probably going to end up at the Concerned Citizens of Navarre. And that site has proven to be tremendously useful, and it's also been proven to be an opportunity for folks to just continue to share information that may not be accurate. So please reconsider your position and help us to find a fix for this situation. Thank you. Any questions, I'd be free to answer, but thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Hi, good morning. Name and address for the record, please.
James Calkins, 8137 4th Street, Navarre, Florida. What I'd like to say is that I think I've talked to a lot of business owners, a lot of people about this issue, and I think that if you all do a compromise, and a compromise would be, we're all for the marketing campaign, we're all for all the hard work that's been put into the new sign, but the sign at the foot of the bridge, a lot of people kind of misunderstood because the Beaches to Rivers, when they did that campaign, it didn't remove the sign from the bridge. And so when I found out that there was a marketing campaign going on, I thought it was just going to change Beaches to Rivers to this new slogan. I didn't think that the sign at the foot of the bridge would be changed. I think that the best solution, best course of action, best compromise would be to put the landmark sign back at the foot of the bridge and then continue with the marketing campaign. I believe that would be, everybody would not everybody, but a large percentage of the population of Navarre would support that. And I recommend y'all put this behind us, get that through, and thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Any other members of the public like to address the board on this issue?
Yvonne Harper, 7375 Olympia Street. You know, every now and then it's important to have a little lightness in some serious situations. So I'm not going to regurgitate the emails that I have sent because I think my position has been quite clear with I do believe that if something is worth doing right, or if it's the right thing to do, it's worth doing right. So I'm going to harken back to 1992 when some of us didn't live in Navarre, but were rather in the United States Navy. I had the honor of working on H-46s in Guam. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever been to Guam, but unlike the representative who thinks it's going to tip over, it never did tip over. It was really quite solid. But it's also very hot, and very humid. And when you're an airframer working on a flight line fixing an H-46, it can get pretty darn hot pretty darn quickly. So, in violation of certain Navy regs, some of us would wear white socks. Now, we had a maintenance master chief. A maintenance master chief, for those who do not know, is the individual who is in charge of all the maintenance and the scheduling of it to ensure that the pilots have up aircraft to fly to complete their mission in addition to the aircrew. So he would go around and he would lift everybody's coveralls. So we would be working to perform dailies and inspections and fix gripes that came back that maybe had downed an aircraft, and his concern was to walk around while we're wearing coveralls, which we didn't wear outside the squadron, and look at our white socks, for those who wore white socks. Because wearing a white sock on a flight line with boots, steel-toed boots, is just slightly less hot than black socks. All the while, he was sleeping with an airman who happened to be in maintenance control, and he was summarily relieved of his command. So what does this have to do with today? I do think that sometimes we allow our emotions, much like this Master Chief did, to overcome the rational, logical part of our brain, and we focus on things that in the big picture, while they're important, they're not the sum. And I think this sign, for some, has become such an emotional issue that they fail to see this is just one piece in the picture. And as a result, just like this Master Chief would deride those who wore white socks and dress them down, there have been and I have to apologize to the board and our staff on behalf of the Navarre residents. Commissioner Parker and Commissioner Lynchard and Julie Morgan has been vilified, absolutely vilified on Facebook. And as far as Julie Morgan, she simply did as the board, under the chairman's leadership, asked them to do. And to me, I just can't even begin to fathom the silence of that issue and not actually saying, this is not right. You know, when the marketing flag is replaced with the nicest flag and Julie Morgan and another young woman's picture is put up there and put on Instagram and subsequently taken down, that there's something seriously wrong there. So the point is we can choose to focus on the white socks, and I understand for those who are attached to that sign emotionally, and I do think that there are other ways that there are other things that we can do to honor that sign and to honor the history. You know, one of my recommendations was to expand the visitor center and to include a section that has the history of Navarre, and have that sign as one of the prominent displays. But this has gotten very, very ugly very, very quickly. And we just have to ask ourselves, at what point are we and our commission going to stand and support each other as far as the decisions of the commission and stop being so ugly as citizens, because it's really rather embarrassing. Thank you.
Any other members of the public like to address the board on this issue? Okay. I'm just going to read a couple of things that I received, and one of them, ironically, is from somebody that was in Guam. Hey, Rob, I just watched your video you posted on the sign issue. I am in Guam right now working, but was really upset that the nostalgic representation sign was gone and the plain Milton-esque sign was put up. There was another one from a gentleman by the name, young man named Jim, that I received. He said, I wanted to reach out and say thank you for your decision. This was on May 27th, to request to keep the original Navarre Beach sign with its original slogan. I don't know much about politics. I'm just a young 25-year-old kid waiting to be shipped out to the Air Force. I just knew that sign meant a lot to me and to tons of people in our community. It sounds silly, but it's more than a sign. It was a landmark for us that grew up here. I apologize for the heat that was brought your way and even the news story that came out of this. That was not my intentions. I was just hoping if enough people said something, someone would notice and take into consideration putting the old sign, the original sign, back up. I would not have imagined a simple Facebook post blowing up like it did. I was also mistaken by a misguided post about what all the $700,000 budget went to. I did think it was just to advertising firm, but I have since been corrected. Again, thank you so much for listening to our community. This is a strong community, the same community that rallied around Ian Lockwood and have stood together many times. We just don't want to change too much. Sorry for the heat and attention that was brought to you by my post, and a few others were posted. You're a good man. There's only one thing that I would disagree with Jim on. He didn't bring the heat. I did. I brought it on myself. And I've made many mistakes during my short time in politics. And I'd also like to think that this board, that we've done some good together over the last few years as well. In an effort to bring changes and improvements, oftentimes I have made decisions as if this is a business instead of government. As if the decisions only impacted me and not all of you as well. As Commissioner Lynchard very accurately stated Monday, we make decisions as a board. If the decision I made to remove the temporary signs only negatively impacted me, then one could argue it was a correct decision. But it didn't just impact me. My decision also negatively impacted all of you and staff, and for that I apologize. The job is hard enough already without me making it any harder. We have heard from Navarre residents today, and since Monday, telling us what they want, and that is their original sign back. I reached out to confirm with our marketing agency if returning the sign would negatively impact our new brand message or their ability to deliver improved outcomes, and that information has been shared with each of you. I understand the idea to add new signs with a consistent message was my initiative, and some of you may be thinking we wouldn't even be in this position today if it wasn't for me. Again, I don't want to diminish or dismiss the mistake that I made. I also don't want us to throw away the months of hard work that has been done to deliver this new brand. This was good work, and it produced a good result. But along the way, the people have clearly told us they want to include something with these changes. And I don't want to lose perspective here. Commissioner Parker and others have mentioned it, that there are those in the local community that have suffered real tragedy in the past few weeks. We are only talking about a sign, but this sign is a symbol to many in the Navarre community. They would like the sign back, a sign that many of them, as we heard from the young man that sent me that note, symbolize what they love about Navarre. The old, historic, iconic landmark sign, as it has been referred to today, and our new slogan can coexist. The community is telling us the original sign at the bridge and the new signs everywhere else is okay. So if we can respond to the community while simultaneously meeting our responsibility to deliver improved outcomes, why wouldn't we do it? If the new sign goes up to replace the original Welcome to Navarre Beach sign, I feel that every time a Navarre resident drives past that sign, it will serve as a visual reminder that Navarre was ignored. Please don't let your feelings toward me keep you from making the best decision for the Navarre community and our county. The new sign has not been put up yet. The old sign is a phone call away. I would ask that you would hear the requests of the community, and I would respectfully request that you consider putting the old sign back up and using the new signs in another location. Would any members of the board like to comment on this matter? Vice Chairman Cole?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, we went through this pretty much the other day, and I believe your apology and your comments were accurate, appreciated, and sufficient. I also respect very much Commissioner Lynchard and Commissioner Parker for their views. And I know we went through a process of determining, soliciting, determining, and voting on the new signage. But like you, I've seen, I would say, dozens of emails compared to perhaps one or two of keep what we got. Now, as a board, my feelings are initially that the new sign goes up because that was the will of this board, and that we immediately open a process to vet replacement of that sign through community input, Chambers of Commerce input, TDC input, and that's the way the cards would fall. And that's the way I felt the other day. But, seeing what we have, hearing what we have, and knowing that this board has the ability to make changes as necessary, and having a quorum here today, with the exception of one of our senior commissioners, that I kind of believe that he would support the will of the board as it falls today, unless, of course, you were going to take down a sign that said "This way to Schmuckla." I believe he would support the actions of the board. I'd like to hear from other commissioners, but I've heard loud and clear from the public, and I think this board has the ability to make the necessary changes. I like what I've heard from the business community that, they'll support our new branding efforts, because the branding is Santa Rosa County. It's not Navarre. We're branding, canoeing companies. We're branding the Beaches to Woodlands Tour. We're branding the Munson Heritage Festival. We're branding the Peanut Festival. We're branding the Railroad Museum and life along the river and the historic parts of our town. So it's branding Santa Rosa County, and I would think it's easy enough to take the branding of Navarre Beach and it be a subset for the history of that area, and that this board looked strongly today at putting up the old sign and continuing with our branding efforts in the rest of the county.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Cole. Commissioner Lynch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate your remarks. I like what Commissioner Cole said initially about putting up the new signs, and then let's create a focus group down there and see what we do with the old signs. I don't see why putting them in front of the visitor center would be a bad idea. I mean, they're historical signs. They're not necessarily iconic signs. They haven't been around for 50 years, like the Pensacola Beach sign or the other historical signs that people think about, or iconic signs that people think about. And it is a sign that's going to point to our beach. I think consistency is as important as anything else. I was over in Orange Beach earlier this week, and as you come across the Foley Beach Expressway, the toll bridge there across the Intercoastal Canal, that intersection tees into Canal Road, and the city has a 1995 or so Lincoln, I think it's a Lincoln Town Car. Hard to tell exactly because it was completely painted in a beach motif with "Welcome to Navarre Beach," "Leave only footprints," and a big pink flip-flop on top of the car. I don't remember seeing that before. that's iconic almost immediately. You know, it's part of their campaign now, though. It has become what what they're trying to do down there on the beach, and their tourism is certainly not suffering because of it. So I think I'm fine with taking that input and seeing if there's a suitable location there, where the old signs can be displayed, whether it's on the corner there at the entrance to the beach, at the visitor center, or incorporated into the triangle there. Have one panel of the old signs and then the two panels on the side of the new marketing effort. I don't know. I'm not a marketing person. But I think that would allow the input from the community on both sides of the issue, because I've also received emails from people associated with the Navarre Beach Leaseholders Association that like the new signs and want the new signs to go up at the entrance to the beach. So has anybody taken the pulse of the Leaseholders Association? So I think rather than taking action on an item that's not on our agenda, without the opportunity for people to be here on both sides of the issue and be heard, let's move forward, let Commissioner Williamson's district get that input, create that focus group, and come up with a way forward. At this point, we don't have anything there. The new signs have not been installed yet.
They have not. They are, the company, because of the rain, has been delayed in the painting, but there is the opportunity that they may have them ready to and install them today.
Okay.
Possibly. Not sure yet.
So that way we would have signs back up for the weekend and the foreseeable future. But there's the opportunity to then go through a process, an organized process, to determine what to do at that location, whether it be the old signs, the new signs, or put the old signs at the visitor center in the future. But we would have signs there now, and they would be consistent with the signage throughout the rest of the district down there.
Vice Chairman Cole, you're recognized.
And Mr. Chairman, I appreciate Commissioner Lynchard's comments, and that's the reason I didn't make mine in the form of a motion.
Commissioner Parker.
Really hadn't planned to speak, but out of respect to Commissioner Cole's request to hear from the other board members, spoke with several of the members present here today, that had reached out and requested I talk with them via phone. First I want to say, Commissioner Williamson, I appreciate the apology, accept it. Absolutely this board is better when working together. Wish, from a statement, a point of wish, we can't go back, but wish it would have been, whether we want to use Spencer Field as a perfect example where, went out there and had a town hall and asked Ann Delaney and Aaron Little to put it in the paper, and they did, and then we got to hear public input prior to making an action. And that's what I told people on the phone yesterday that called me. I said, hey, wish there would have been the outreach effectively in that district. I definitely cannot take on every district before we did it, but now we do. It's documented, as Commissioner Lynchard said. We have people on both sides of the aisle. And what I want to put out is, as I told them on the phone, and I said, hey, I have no problem saying it here in public. The big portion of the outcry that has been referred to in the past about, the folks on the Facebook page that are in support of, or I guess you'd say against the unanimous decision that the board made, have now turned to tactics, and just calling it like it is, that are bullying style tactics to slander myself and other commissioners and name calling and sort of, I guess on their Facebook level trying to, incite division and turmoil in the community where you members of Navarre live, I think is very sad. We've made a decision as a board in the past on issues that were very contentious on both sides of the aisle, and we knew that going into it. And I referenced the courthouse as a perfect example. There definitely was not a unanimous vote, but one thing I'm very proud to say is that the vast majority of folks were very respectful in their, dissenting views, whether one side or the other. And I shared that with y'all on the phone, several members of you, when you called. To me, folks that get into slandering and name calling any adults or children, elected officials or not, are not, to me, the type of individuals that, I'm trying to raise my children to be, or that I think our law enforcement officers strive to hope that individuals in our community and what I would consider the proud community where I am to live should act. So therefore, their behavior, gets into diminishing their voice. I shared that with you on the phone, and I just wanted to say it from the pulpit so you would know I definitely do not change the opinion, because the truth is the truth, no matter who's in the room or on the phone. Those are my comments. The only thing I would ask of Commissioner Williamson is, maybe if there, and I'll collectively tie in members like Tony Alexander or James Calcas or Will, if that you could relay that message. I haven't seen any, maybe not partaking, but I haven't seen any denouncing or condemning of this slander and things. And I talked with y'all on the phone. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And I told you, you can try to bully myself or other people and call us names. And I think you actually push, and I don't mean you, but the folks that have done it. And I haven't seen anyone, including the chairman, publicly denounce that. Hey, we're not going to have that kind of language or behavior, or I haven't seen a video talking to that. That then becomes, I feel like, viable input that then we can open a meaningful dialogue, such as we had today here at Civilly and we have at every meeting. So again, I just want to say that because I'd shared that with you on the phone, and that way, I would hope that instead of sort of continuing to stir the pot or incite it by continuing a legacy, there would be some denouncing and going back to, as Commissioner Lynchard said, a civil process through this. And whether there will be a change or not, but absolutely, when we make decisions, there's unfortunately not everybody in 160,000+ people going to be happy. We know that going into it, but the last thing that will cause myself as a representative, very proud representative of all the citizens of this county, to change well thought out decisions will be name calling from very few people. So that is where I stand. I give those comments in respect to Commissioner Cole asking for comments. Very excited to see the new signs go up. And I hope also that the members here who are very influential and obviously members of the group, I believe that the chairman may or may not be, personally not a member, but I've seen some of it. I hope that you will publicly reach out and tell them, hey, we're putting these signs up. This is what the board voted on. We'll talk, if it comes back up, it comes back up. But please don't damage or destroy the signs. I mean, these are signs that were purchased with taxpayer money from, we could say that it's not general fund, it's bed tax, but just please, I'm asking you to let them know to act civilly and lawfully. And I hope that the event y'all have planned tomorrow goes safely and be mindful of traffic. And those are all the comments I have. Thank you very much for coming to speak with the board today.
Thank you, and I'm going to move on. I appreciate the comments. A couple of things that have been thrown out there that I do want to touch on real quick. there was a process where there was public comment solicited, not only countywide, but in Navarre. The Heart of Navarre Tourism Corridor improvements, where I went and met with, I believe, a dozen stakeholders and requested that they provide what they wanted as their improvements. And part of that, resulting of that, was we also ended up with an idea that we wanted to have consolidated signage throughout the tourism corridor area. At the time, we had no sign at the pier, just 4x4s up there. And I don't recall a lot of folks looking to make a change on that at the time. We had one different sign at the boat launch. We had another different sign at the entrance to the marine park. And so, yeah, I thought it was a good idea to have consolidated signage, and that was talked about. There was no secret there. I think some confusion has been that the effort to rebrand and the focus groups to rebrand that resulted in the new slogan was somehow tied to the signs that went up. The signage effort was folded into this whole overall rebranding effort, but it was never tested. The signs were never tested to see if people liked them or not, and at no time did anybody expect that there was going to be this kind of pushback until the temporary signs went up. I guess with 345 emails received so far on this issue is what our PIO has told us, and I don't know how many we've received in the last day, and probably a dozen or less of those are in opposition of us bringing back the old sign. I don't know how much difference a town hall is going to make. I don't know how much clearer the folks of Navarre can say what they want. And lastly, I'd like to speak to this narrative that is being put forward about me not denouncing some of the comments on Facebook. I think everybody would admit that representing District 4 can provide its own unique challenges, and that we have a vocal, strong, passionate community that's not afraid to tell you what they think. I love that. But I've received 15 attack editorials directed specifically at me, and there's not a day that goes by that my name is not lit up on Facebook, on any number of sites, by some of the people that are sitting in the audience today that I'm sure will be walking down the hallway to file their paperwork with the Supervisor of Elections at some point in the very near future. And I don't recall anybody coming to my defense on this board. I don't recall anybody saying that we need to denounce these attacks against Commissioner Williamson. I think we try to do the best that we can, and I realize that this situation, as I said, I brought a lot of this on myself, and I can understand that some of you may believe that had I not taken the temporary signs down, and that if they were still left up there this entire time, that the Navarre community would have had a different opinion. I don't believe that they would. And I'm wondering if you'd make the same decision. If the temporary sign had been left up this entire time, would you still be deciding that we didn't need to put the original sign back up? But the board has spoken. Out of respect to the board, I can count. I'm not going to call for a vote, so I can be the one vote of a 3-1 vote. But I think this is on public record. I think people know that my request was to bring back the original sign. And yes, I've already reached out to Tony yesterday that I'd like to get together with folks in the community and figure out how we can improve communication between between the government and the local community, and listen to what forms of communication they would prefer, and how we can continue to improve. You know, I do video updates, I've done town halls, I do a countywide listening tour, I've done, Facebook pages. I've tried doing as many things as I can to increase communication, and I'll just have to keep improving and getting better. But I appreciate and respect the comments of my fellow board members. And if there's no further comments from members of the public, then I'm going to move on.
I have a comment. Yvonne Harper, 7573 Olympia Street, Navarre. So, since Chairman Williamson just decided to call me out without using my name because that's the courage that he has, and I have been consistent with my stand on this, and every position that I have taken has been supported by fact. Again, he could have gotten to the same end by doing the process correctly. But for all those, including Mr. Goulet in the audience, who seem to think that I am doing this because I am running for some office, which of course I'm not, have failed to either, one, follow anything that I have done since I've moved to this county, or two, really just don't know me, and that's okay. Because I don't do things to be popular, I stand for what is right. And if that means that you want to think I'm running for office or attacking you or whatever, that's fine. That's fine. But as this board knows, I have been consistent in my principles. If it's worth doing, you do it right. And Chairman Williamson, you could have gotten to the same end by doing it right. And if you would like to ask me if I'm running for office, the answer is no, I'm not. I am standing on behalf of Navarre and on behalf of this board to ensure that the process that was duly done in the light of day is respected, that each of the board members are respected. And the next time you call me out, Chairman Williamson, be man enough to use my name.
Mr. Chairman.
Would anybody else like to make any comments on this matter before we move forward?
Just briefly, Mr. Chairman, Tony Alexander, 6555 Kempton Street. Before this issue moves forward, Commissioner Cole, I would urge you to reconsider presenting a motion. To Commissioner Lynchard's point, there has been adequate opportunity for public involvement in this process, and I think it's taken us a year to get where we are, or the better part of a year to get where we are. And I have personally facilitated some of this opportunity for folks to be involved and engaged in the process. And to Commissioner Parker's point, of course, I condemn any sort of personal attacks or this Facebook nonsense with some of the harassment that I saw directed toward both you and Commissioner Lynchard. But within that vocal minority, those folks are a minority. And I think it's unfair to associate those that are passionate about this sign that they see as an iconic sign and the few that want to resort to name calling and belittling and then continuing to fuel this narrative. And unfortunately for the board, there is a belief in Navarre that for decades the county has ignored Navarre, and that it's been all about Central and North County and not about South County. Those of us that have been engaged in the process know that that's not true. Commissioner Cole, I'd urge you to reconsider. I do think if we have a focus group and we do these things that folks have had ample opportunity to be engaged in, we're going to end up at the same place. Those that will engage in the process in Navarre are those that are engaged in the process now, and overwhelmingly, they're in support of returning the old sign to its original location. So we're essentially kicking the can down the road. Again, I respect and appreciate the decision that the board made previously, but I also understand that there's been ample time for folks to have input in this process, and I do think we're going to end up at the same point. So, again, thank you for the opportunity. Commissioner Cole's getting ready to turn his light on. Don't know if he has a question. No, thank you. Thank you, Tony. Vice Chairman Cole, you're recognized. Mr. Goulet, come forward. Name and address for the record, please.
Timothy Goulet, 7774 Navarre Parkway, Navarre, Florida 32566. And I wasn't planning on speaking today, but now I've been very active with tourism since I moved back to Navarre a couple years ago. Familiar with some of you, not with some others, but attended some of the meetings that Commissioner Williamson spoke about when we were talking about the signage issues, when we were talking about the new marketing campaign. My opinion on the new marketing campaign is immaterial. In fact, nobody's opinion is material anymore, as it's already started and we have to support it. And I do support it. The issue I had from the beginning with the sign, and the reason my response was immediate when the old sign was taken down, was at no point during any meeting or any conversation, and I'm pretty plugged in when it comes to tourism, when it comes to this process, No mention was taking down that sign. There was a discussion about fixing the signage problem on the island, which we had a very bad signage problem on the island, both in uniform and look, but also in signs that meant nothing or did nothing, and then signs that needed to be there that weren't there. But at no point during any discussion of the TDC tourism marketing campaign, at no point during any discussion of the signage on the island issues of the master plan components, was there a discussion about taking that sign at the entrance of the Navarre Beach Causeway down. Now, maybe it happened at a meeting that I wasn't involved in or something, but that to me was the surprise. And I think that's, from a lot of the people that I've spoken with, that was their surprise. We're fine. I'm fine. All the new signs, the branding campaign, I agree with Commissioner Cole. We're not branding Navarre Beach, we're branding Santa Rosa County. This is a countywide effort. I work with the Snowbirds Club. We work diligently to take our seniors that come and visit with us and send them out into the county. We've worked with the pottery folks. We've worked with the Marine Science Station. We've worked with Adventures Unlimited. So that's part of what tourism is about in this county. It's not just a beach. Now, maybe the beach is what draws them here, but what keeps them here and what gets them to spend a lot of their money here is the whole county. And I agree with that. The sign at the causeway, I moved here first in 1999. That was really the first introduction to Navarre that I had. My family's been here since 1995. We stayed after Ivan. In fact, my family stayed during Ivan. So that was a scary time. If you weren't here during Ivan, it was terrifying. We were here for Katrina. We're business owners in this community. My mother's retired. We just built her a new house. My brother's built a house. We're homeowners. We're property owners. We're involved. It's not a fight. This isn't about saying, Commissioner Lynchard, you've done something wrong, or Commissioner Williamson, you've done something wrong. That's just the politics and the discussions of things that happen. This is really just about what signifies Navarre. We don't have a lot that signifies us. Most of the iconic things that were on the beach were wiped out. In fact, we just got a hotel back on the beach after 25, 30 years. That's kind of where we're at. Navarre's growing. The tourism is growing. We're thrilled to death with the work that the TDC has done. I don't agree with every decision that's made, and I certainly don't agree with everything that's done, but you can't argue with the success. That sign isn't going to hinder that. It's not going to hamper that. Commissioner Lynchard, you talk about universal. I'm in marketing. It's what I do for a living. There's the universal appeal that I agree with you is important, but that sign is a different component of what Navarre and Navarre Beach are. Everything else can be the new look and feel, and in 3 years, if it doesn't work, guess what we're going to be doing? Changing it, like we did from 3 years ago, because that didn't work very well. Why would we want to take away something that, while isn't iconic yet, 25 or 30 years from now, may be iconic? What's going to become iconic on Navarre Beach if we keep tearing it down? That's my point. I don't want to, I get Yvonne, I think she's running. I don't believe her when she says she's not, so that's fine. We can disagree.
Sorry, can you support that statement?
No, I can't.
Okay,
That's opinion.
Don't make something you can't support.
So that's my opinion. Beyond that, I'm not running. That I know for sure. And if she thinks I am, that's fine too. But I'm sorry, just a little levity. That's what I'm saying is, to generate something that's iconic, you have to let it stand. And that's all we're asking, is let that one sign stand. If it ends up that 3 years from now, nothing's working and we got to change everything, we can readdress the conversation. But if we take it down now, we can never get it back up. That's the way it works. You don't bring it back later. So I agree with Commissioner Williamson and I agree with Mr. Alexander, that it would be great if we could look at it today or have a timeline set that we can get a final vote on this one way or the other. But I stand for keeping the sign as it is with the old Florida's Best Kept Secret. Any questions for me?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chairman Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I think we got staff fairly well confused now, or at least I think it's board's responsibility is to set direction for this and put this behind us. And as your vice chair, I'm going to take on that task. That we respect the order of order. I don't know if that's proper terminology, but that's what I'm going to call it. And follow Commissioner Lynchard's suggestion. I too can count, and the outcome of a 2-2 vote remains the same as a 3-1 vote. I am hoping at the end of this, when I present it as a motion, we can have a motion without objection, that we follow what we've already voted on in placing up the new sign, with a promise to everybody in this audience, everybody on Facebook, everybody can read here and wants to get involved, that along with that motion, that this board assigns staff to immediately today work with Commissioner Williamson and his district to solicit input from the chambers, both of them, the Tourist Development Council, leaseholders, business owners, everybody and their uncle that want to be involved in their community, and bring that back to us in a proper manner to make a change if necessary to the signage that we've already voted on. And I do so without objection.
I object. I can in good conscience, and I appreciate what you're trying to craft here. I'm not trying to be a contrarian, but the district that I represent, I believe, has spoken as clear on this as any other district has spoken clearly on anything else that I've seen during my time on this board. If it was low-income subsidized housing, if it was, you name it. And I feel that I would be neglecting my responsibility to my constituents if I supported moving forward with placement of the new sign at the bridge, given the feedback that I think we've all received. So I can't support that. I'm going to engage with the public again, regardless of the outcome today. The initial motion stands. There should be no ambiguity for staff. There hasn't been another vote, but that initial motion has moved forward, that the new sign, when it comes in, is going up. And I'm saying on the record that I stand in objection to that. I think that the will of the people has been there, and it is there. So I don't think we need I don't need a motion to have me go back to the community and ask them how they feel on this. We're going to do that anyway. I appreciate you trying to craft some kind of compromise, but bottom line, when that new sign goes up, I don't know that there's going to be anything that will satisfy the community. Yeah, they're going to stop talking about it. Sure, a couple, 2 or 3 weeks, they'll move on. And I'm not insinuating that they're going to have people here every meeting talking about this, but I don't know that they'll ever forget it. I think, as Tony Alexander said, this is going to be something that will be coming up again and again.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm not suggesting that the signs stay there. I'm suggesting that rather than, I guess, shooting from the hip, or if you want to get right down to it, a lynch mob type mentality on not doing what this board has voted on, I'd like to show cohesiveness in this board by the add-on that we would immediately go after properly public input and give it time and bring it back to this board that basically, hey, we don't like this sign, we want to go back to the old sign, and it's done through the proper channels, as we should, as a community, as by Americans. I think it's kind of, we're hearing from those that don't like it, but we're not hearing from those that really don't care, really think it's going to stay the same way. And I've talked to several of you and told you, I said, I'm probably not going to vote to change it immediately, that we need to vet this properly through the proper channels, but you have my support. What the will of the people of the community of Navarre want is going to be the ultimate outcome. But we don't need to do that from this dais without the proper input, just by a head count on email, just by a head count on Facebook. Tony, you bring us the will of your chamber, involve the other chamber, bring us the view of the island authority or the leaseholders. You know, the outcome, as everybody says, very likely would be the same, but at least we could say we did it right. We just didn't haphazardly did it. Perhaps as an example of how we already have done it. So, thank you.
So you would like to direct staff to have a coordinated public comment period related specifically to this? That is something I would support. My understanding was that your motion also included supporting the putting up of the new sign. I don't support that, but if you wanted to just have a standalone motion that would direct staff, I was going to do that anyway.
As you
that'd be
said,
fine. I would support that.
The new sign's already water under the bridge. That's been voted on several weeks ago. So I'll pull that part of it out and make a motion that we, as of today, staff gets working on gathering information, gathering comments. If it needs to have a public, not a public hearing, but a town hall meeting, so be it. But let's do it through the proper channels and make sure that old sign don't go nowhere, because from what I'm hearing, very likely it may have to get changed again.
Well, I'm working on the new survey, the updated survey. I put out one when I was first elected, and we had 1,000 respondents, and I'm in the process of working on a new District 4 Improvement Plan survey, because quite a few of the items that were on the original survey have been accomplished. So I will definitely include this as part of the survey, and that way folks won't feel pressured, or there won't be any mob mentality, as I've heard and read. I think what some would consider mob mentality, others might consider just, views of the public. But be that as it may, I appreciate your recommendation. I am comfortable working with staff on this issue and developing ways that we can get non-biased public comment on this specific issue, and then we'll bring it back to the board and see if the board believes that that communication and response is valid, and then we can go from there. We've been on this topic for quite some time, and I would like to move on to a break so we can get on to the rest of the agenda. We have other people in the audience that are here for other items. So, Commissioner Parker, I'll recognize you, but I would ask you to please be brief.
Okay. I would just like to caveat that we set some parameters. I can't support a blanket direct staff without setting some parameters. Are we talking Julie or limited? Because unfortunately, in the wake of what I think we all recognize of very, very important decisions, such as, I've got residents out there right now displaced from their home. Staff has already had to spend an exorbitant amount of time on this issue due to, obviously, some requests for, an outpouring of things. Again, it's sad. I mean it. I wish, like Mr. Galais said, that could have spearheaded this ahead of time before it was brought. But I would just like that to keep it in perspective. Staff's trying to run this county. We're trying to provide transportation for folks so that we're not tearing up cars, hitting potholes, and people flooding. So I know you didn't like the idea of supporting that part of the motion of putting the sign up, and you said you were planning on reaching out anyway. I just want to caution, I guess, from my perspective of saying that this is going to be an exorbitant staff effort to undertake this. Hey, the new sign's going up today or tomorrow, it sounds like, from our county administrator. I would venture to say I'm not in the business, but we're upon the peak of our tourism season. I think by the time that the tourism season's over, that'd probably be a pretty good time that you've been able to get feedback. Then we could actually have response from the citizens about how they feel about the new sign. I don't think that, some photos necessarily allow, we may have more of a positive outcry after that time. And also, you'll have some time for emotions to sort of quell. And I would not, and I totally respect what the vice chairman said, that I'm sure our senior board member that has dealt with more issues than, you know, three of us put together as far as his time on the board would support us. But I would not want to make action to overturn a vote that Commissioner Salter was a part of without at least hearing from him, because I've come to respect the wisdom that he has on dealing with issues from the past. So that was my only caveat, is that if we're going to have that motion on the floor, that we could just try to maybe, you know, be cognizant when we say devote staff time to that, to try to keep it, you know, where we can remember that staff has a lot on them, and I think there's some significant things that we need to be focused on right now.
Understood. At this point, I would just like to say we have no motion on the floor. If you would rescind, we have an objection. I would just like to move on, and I will readdress this issue at another time, because I can see quite clearly that this is not going anywhere today, and the comments just keep getting chippier and chippier. So I think we should just move on, and
Mr. Chairman, my motion stands. I think staff can, our county administrator or assistant county administrator, know the importance of delegating their time properly, and I appreciate Commissioner Parker pointing that out, but I certainly understand that there's other things that would take precedence over this, and I believe we've got a staff that can delegate to proper people in a proper time to go ahead and, I'd like the folks in Navarre and everybody in the county to understand that the new sign is going up, but it's not ending there, that we've already set a course of events to happen, and allow staff to put time accordingly towards that. And that's my motion.
Yep, we're already working on surveying, we're already working on the listening tour, so that's fine. I've objected to the motion. If you would restate your motion, and we will call the question.
Okay. My motion is that, like I say, the sign issue of the new sign is totally off of this motion, but that as a board, we allow staff to dedicate time as proper, according to other items they have to do in their daily routine, or as events appear, to organize input from the two chambers, Leaseholders Association, businesses, and the TDC in reference to the new sign remaining versus the old sign going up. And I do so without objection.
The way the motion was worded, it said that staff would be allowed to do that, and since they already are, I can support the motion. We're just allowing them to do what they're already, it's part of their job description. So as the motion has been worded, I would support that. We're not giving any specific direction to them, so that was made without objection. Hearing no objection, Commissioner Lynch.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to do any, I mean, it's semantics. There's no telling how many staff hours have been devoted to this issue and board hours in the last 2 weeks from tonight. Since our meeting Monday when we discussed this at length, Governor Scott was in Pensacola bringing $300 million to the Panhandle through Triumph. That's what we should be focused on. That's what our community should be focused on. What's going right in our county? You know, that will change the landscape in the Panhandle for decades to come. And we haven't discussed it at all, really. We had Tuesday night a 100-year flood event, another 100-year flood event. We had 11.6 inches of rain in what, just over a 4-hour period? So, or 12-hour period. 15 homes at least flooded. People displaced. That's what we need to focus on. I'm all for, let's listen to the people of Navarre. Get that organized input from the stakeholders, and then let's revisit it down the road. But let's move on at this point, and get back to the business of the county.
I agree. Hearing no objection, the motion is approved. We will move on to a 10-minute break and reconvene at 5 of 11. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. And we are on Administrative Committee, item number 1. We talked about this on Monday. If nobody has any comments or questions about item number 1, then we'll move approval of this item without objection. Hearing no objection, that item is moved. Item number 2, Gulf Environmental Benefit Fund project submittals. You have those before you. If there's no comments or questions, then we will move approval of item number 2 without objection. Hearing no objection, that item is moved. Item number 3, Restore Pot 2 Estuary Program Letter of Financial Support. Move approval of this item without objection. Hearing no objection, that item is moved. Item number 4, Baghdad Millsite Park Dog Park Grant Opportunity. Move approval of this item without objection. Vice Chairman Cole, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I only want to put in there the caveat that that I'm supporting the area that's indicated, outlined in red on that map. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. With that clarification, I'd move approval of this item without objection. Hearing no objection, that item is moved. Item 5, State Road 87 Landscape Design Agreement. Move approval of this item without objection. Hearing, Roy? you're
Mr.
recognized.
Chairman, that includes the designation of Highway 87 as a tourism corridor, Highway 87 South. I don't think you need to read the designation, but you need to reference
Need a
it.
breakout, separate one?
Right.
Okay. We have the wording in there that designates 87, as was discussed on Monday, the areas south of I-10 as part of the tourism corridor, and our county attorney has laid out the justifications for those findings of fact. Is our resident attorney, you fine with that? All right.
I am.
Well, I would move approval of the findings of fact and the designation of Highway 87 south of I-10 as a tourism corridor without objection. Hearing no objection, that item is moved. The item, the other portion of the item number 5 related to the agreement with Melvin Consulting Engineers in that 2-phase project that we discussed on Monday. Move approval of that item without objection. Hearing no objection, that is moved. Items 6 and 7 relate to the same item, Settlers Colony Drainage Expansion Project. I would move approval of both of these items, 6 and 7, without objection. Hearing no objection, those items are moved. Item number 8 regards the meeting list for the remainder of the month. You can see those dates listed in front of you in the times. I'd move approval of the meeting list without objection. Hearing no objection, those items are moved. On to the engineer's report. We discussed items 1 and 2 on Monday morning. If there are no questions or comments, then we will move approval of items 1 and 2 in the engineer's report without objection. Hearing no objection, those items are moved. Now moving to the single item on Public Services Committee, Vice Chairman Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We discussed item number 1, rural transportation priorities the other day. This is for fiscal year 2019 to 2023. So if there's no other comments or questions from board members or the public, I'll move that without objection.
Hearing no objection, that item is moved.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes public service.
Public Works Committee, we have 3 items. Commissioner Salter still recovering, and we will move on to Commissioner Lynchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 1, Santa Rosa Sportsplex, rescinding of the batting cage roofing award. Recommend approval to rescind the award to L&H Metals LLC for the roofing of the batting cages at the Santa Rosa Sportsplex as approved at the April 13th, 2017 BOCC meeting. Unless there are any questions or comments, I'll move approval without objection.
Vice Chairman Cole, your light is on, or would you like to be recognized? Okay. Hearing no objection, item number 1 is approved.
Item 2, recommend approval to award the installation of metal roofing over the batting cages at the Santa Rosa Sportsplex to Blackwater Trust Systems LLC in the amount of $17,958.85, funding to be split evenly between District 1 and 3 recreation funds. I'll move approval without objection.
Hearing no objection, that item is moved.
Item 3, Sirocco Road paving. Recommend approval to pave the county-maintained portion of Sirocco Road at an estimated cost of $16,620 to be paid in advance by BC Land, Inc. Unless there are any questions or comments, I'll move approval without objection.
Hearing no objection, item is moved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes Public Works.
Budget and Financial Management Committee, Commissioner Parker.
Thank you. Item number 1, recommend approval of the bid in the amount of $32,400 from Adam Moats Construction for housing rehab at 4337 Pace Lane as the low responsive bidder. I would make that recommendation without objection.
Hearing no objection, the item is moved.
If there are no changes to the budget amendments, which are items number 2 through 8 since Monday, I would recommend approval of those without objection.
Hearing no objection, items 2 through 8 are moved.
Item number 9 is recommend approval of the check register.
Hearing no objection to the move of the check register, that item has been approved.
Thank you. And just a question, when is the plan for the consent agenda format to start?
Oh, it will be the first meeting in July.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the Budget and Financial Management Committee.
Okay, we have members of the public here. Would any members of the public like to address the board? Good morning. If you would, please name and address for the record, please.
Jerry Cooey, 6049 Arnie's Way. Mr. Parker, I'm glad you asked that question on consent agenda. And I want to start by saying I'm not suggesting that it is going to happen here, but I have watched consent agendas in other places cause problems. And what happens if you have a board of people who have the consent agenda available to them, it has a tendency to kill the discussion on Monday sometimes, in the case of our county. It tends to choke out the public input that I hear you all say that you value all the time. I'll give you some examples in counties a little further down where you had a bad group of commissioners who just didn't want to listen to anybody. And so their entire agenda would be consent. They'd walk in a room and say, "There you go, thanks for stopping by." As a person who's worked a long time on sunshine issues and public involvement, I spend a little time before July and think about that. It's not necessarily about what happens today. I want you to think about the citizens that are in this audience, and the 5 of you are not here, and we get that bad board. It was actually Wakulla County. Unbelievable. 30 items on the agenda, consent agreement. Now, honestly, and those citizens started standing up to that, but how do you know it's a consent agenda if you haven't had private conversations with each other? How do you know unless the county administrator has unquestionably polled all the members or shared that? It can pose a problem. I understand expediency. I get that. Sometimes meetings get real long. I get that. However, think long and hard about it before you take that action. Think about down the road. Honestly, although I have railed from time to time about actions of this board still stands above many other counties. Certainly better than many cities that I know of. You're allowing public input. You're not hassling people. Somebody comes up, at last minute, you always give them an opportunity. It's the appearance. So I just make that plea to you. Mr. Andrews, I'm officially requesting any emails that might have been sent to me since November the 1st of 2016. And you can just let me know whenever you get the list.
Any email?
Any emails sent to me by the county since November the 1st of 2016. Another item that I would like to discuss with you, Mr. Andrews, is, and I'll give you, I know you've taken some steps and you've paid attention to some of our boards. I have a little concern, and my concern is, do we think it's a good idea for this board, a recognized board, to loan money to this board? Do we think it's a good idea for some of the same people to be on this board that sits on this board to take a vote from this board to give this board money? I want to be fair about it, and I want you to ask those questions. And if you see something that's improper, I'd appreciate you do something about it.
Any emails from, well, I think we can have a reading of any emails that's gone through the county server
Sure.
to you.
That's fine.
Since when?
November 1st, 2016.
Okay.
And then, if you will look at the boards. Here's my concerns, and once again, this has happened in other places. Familiarity between boards, where you have multiple people on similar boards. I don't know that it's the business of one board to be loaning money to another board, whether the purpose is good or not. I just have a real concern with that.
Well, can I have an understanding about what boards you're talking about? I mean, what?
TDC.
Okay.
I've kind of watched over time as we discuss the courthouse again, and I just want to come forward again and to say to this board, there is free property in East Milton near the jail. There's an offer of 15 acres at the Byram Estate property. There is the city of Milton, which I will remind you again, still got the majority of the votes of the citizens. I would also be remiss if I didn't remind you all that the Haas Center, the University of West Florida, did their survey, and 58% of the people said it should be where it's at, and another 17 or 18% said it should be in the general vicinity of Milton. As a taxpayer, let me be very clear. I think I've been clear before, but we're not going to buy any more property to build a courthouse on. All right? I put out everything that I could to get this courthouse done the last time, and two people that sat on this board, and I'm going to name them today, Bob Cole and Don Salter, did everything they could to keep the courthouse vote from passing. All right? You had it in the bag. You missed it by 800 votes. And I'm still incensed about that. We could have accomplished the additional tax revenue that you guys sought and the courthouse at the same time. All right? It was a shameful action that happened. I feel for the people in the courthouse. We can do better than that. But I still stand here today and tell you we're not buying any more high-priced property. Period, end of story. I hope I'm not stuttering here. The mention of buying any more property for a courthouse, actions will be taken. I'm just not going to put up with it. We have had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity and we stub our toe over and over and over, and the single issue that it comes down to is somebody wanting to sell us overpriced property. So, one final thing, and I want to be very clear that what the folks in Navarre want for their sign, that's their business. I'm not involving myself in what's written on the sign or what the sign looks like. However, I do have issue with actions that was taken by Commissioner Williamson. I want to read a couple things to you. Justice is blind. This expression means justice is impartial and objective. There is an illusion here that the Greek statue for justice wearing a blindfold as to not to treat friends differently from strangers or rich people better than poor people. I would add to that that justice should not mean that an elected official should be allowed to do something that a private citizen can't get away with. I'm quite certain that if I went through police arrest reports, I'll find all kind of reports about people that have been caught taking something that didn't belong to them, and they had to make restitution for that. I want to be very clear in that it's not a mistake when you get in your car and you drive to a location and you remove something that was paid for by the taxpayers. You use your automobile in the commission of that, you load it up in the back of your truck, and you take it away. That was a taxpayer-owned item. It's not a mistake. It's not about the emotion of the moment of somebody sent me an email. It is a criminal act. All right, and there's 2 sheriff's deputies here today, and I really think they should take a message back to their boss that this needs to be viewed as a criminal act. I'm sorry is fine because other commissioners were offended by that action. As a taxpayer, I'm offended, and the time has come. I'm sick and tired of nobody has ever done anything wrong, or they didn't mean to do it. Well, they did mean to do it. The run-of-the-mill citizen speeds, he gets a ticket, and he goes to court. Here is an action by an elected official taking property that does not belong to him, and something needs to be done about it. It is improper. It was an improper action. It's time we call it what it is. It's theft. And I will remind the board and those listening to this meeting that not long ago we had somebody that messed with a sign. And they got charged with a crime and had to go through the court system. Okay? What's fair is fair. Not picking on anybody, but theft is theft, and it needs to be dealt with. And I hope that law enforcement will step up to the plate and take care of this. Thank you for your time.
Any other members of the public like to address the board? Okay, hearing none, seeing none, we are adjourned.